Hello, welcome to Creating Portland. I'm your host, Pearson Kunz, and on this podcast, I'll be interviewing progressive creators who are using their art to shape the culture of our city and beyond. I hope you enjoy this episode of Creating Portland. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Creating Portland. Thanks for tuning in if it's your first time. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our outstanding guest today. Her name is Nicole Smith, and she is a teaching artist and performer in Portland. She does after-school programs across the city, some residencies in schools, and some workshops in schools. And she also performs as 1/4 of the time-traveling boy band known as the Turnbackboyz. And we're going to get into all of that here on the pod, but I am so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. It's definitely been a while since we've had a chance to talk, so it's good to just connect with people, anyone out there.
Absolutely. I am just grasping at straws, shouting into the void every day, and hoping that there's people on the other side to talk about art, which is so exciting.
Yes.
So thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Let's start off with our big, broad question, just to kick things off in the right direction, and that is, how are you helping to create Portland?
Create Portland. I love that question because it can be answered in a lot of different ways, but I think I'll focus on my artistic endeavors, right? Artistic endeavors in this city. I'm not a Portland native. I'm one of those stinky Californians that ended up here, but I have been lucky enough to work in Portland for about 10 years now, which is kind of by chance. I ended up working at a summer theater camp here years and years ago, and that quickly became home. And then Portland quickly became home, and the community just kind of continued to grow around me. So here we are, kind of stuck now here in Portland. But creating Portland has been, I feel like I've more jumped into things that have existed in Portland, and I've been able to kind of add my spin to it or be a new voice in the room. Maybe a lot of places that maybe my voices like mine weren't before. So that's been pretty cool, especially in the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years, working more closely with Portland Public Schools and, actually all of the public schools and private schools in the Portland area, David Douglas, Centennial, what are the other ones? Beaverton, all of those awesome school districts, and being able to kind of go behind the curtain a little bit of what's happening or what is and is not happening in Portland schools as far as arts education, specifically theater education and the opportunity to perform and be in plays and have fun on stage. So what I was able to do, or at least one of my goals and intentions in the last few years has been just accessibility for those kinds of programs. I know that was super important to me as a kid. I won't say privileged, but definitely blessed to be able to, I had the support and the opportunities to take theater classes and be in plays and discover that I really, really liked this thing, and figure out what my role was in all of these different parts of theater. So I think when I think of myself creating Portland, I'm not doing a lot of the creating, but I hope that the work I'm doing is giving kids and students and teachers these to create. That's really the intention behind a lot of my work. On the other hand, in my free time, I do have the Turnbackboyz, and that is definitely a passion project that feels anytime I'm not working, I am definitely putting in some time in that project. What's really cool about the Turnbackboyz is, again, this is something that existed before I was a face in Portland, but I got to jump into this really cool queer project and collaborate with these other really cool queer artists. And like I said, kind of put my stamp on things, put my spin on things, grow the project, and that's been my most creative aspect of working in Portland so far. Yeah. Anything I'd be more.
Nice. Okay, yeah, what a range of stuff. We're all over the place there, which we love. Well, let's start with the work you do in the schools. Can you just paint us a little bit of a picture of what that would look like when you're showing up to a school? What are you offering? How are you engaging with students? What is this sort of creation looking like?
Definitely. I'm also a little sorry. My dog is trying to get in the camera right now. She's very determined.
Let him in. Let him say hi.
You could totally say hi. She's very engaged with the peanut butter Kong right now. So that's kind of the distraction right now. Maybe she'll say hi in a little bit. So yes, my work in schools. Most of the time that I'm in schools, I'm doing after school programs. It's usually when our outreach programs are offered as in-school programs, as after-school programs, as workshops, as residencies, whatever the school needs. But I have found that a lot of schools need after-school enrichment. And so that's a really great opportunity for us as teaching artists to get in and work with kids and, get to see the same kids week after week, which is nice and not always true for the work that I do in schools. Sometimes it's a one and done or a workshop here and there. I don't really get to connect with the kids afterwards. So the after school programs are a big part of what we do, or at least what I do when I'm in schools. That looks like my favorite thing. That looks like being the fun, special teacher that comes once a week, and for an hour, our rules are a little different and our community feels different and the space is, whatever we need to do to make that hour we have together feel magical. And that's really cool for me because I don't necessarily have to there's still discipline and behavior management and classroom management for sure. We all need to be safe with our bodies and not hit our friends and all of that. But it's an opportunity that I know they're coming for an hour and we're going to do something different than we've done all day long. We're going to be up on our feet. We're going to be doing funny voices and funny characters. There's no telling what, Miss Smith, like what sounds I'm going to make at any given point during the class there. It's just a fun for everybody. I like to play, so that's what's fun for me. And then in other cases, I might be working directly with a teacher to kind of integrate theater lessons or theater skills or techniques into their curriculum. So maybe we're doing a history unit and we're going to work on some like little mini monologues from historical figures from that time period so that they can jump into their shoes and do something as a performance. We're still kind of looking at our history and looking at those historical figures. Maybe it's science. It's always a challenge to try to figure out how to make our STEM classes more performative or more performance-based or interactive. But hey, we'll get up and we'll all pretend to be planets and we'll decide like what does, depending on how we describe Jupiter, what would Jupiter's voice sound like? How would Jupiter walk? We can get kind of goofy with it. And that's also, again, I keep saying my favorite thing, but my other favorite thing is working with teachers and looking at something that's, just on paper and saying, how can we make this an interactive activity that your students are going to really, hold on to the information.
Right. And that's something I think of myself as a student, and so much of the content we were getting was so unemotional and so disconnected from anything in my reality.
Yeah.
So tying it into something I can connect with, that I can embody, something I can engage with physically is such a great idea.
And there's so many different types of learners out there. Obviously, not every kid will be super into, running around and making funny voices in order to get your multiplication tables down. I don't know. It might not work for every kid, but I do. I remember a lot of the lessons and the things, topics in school that I recall, or just even really specific facts. Sometimes it's because someone sang it to me, or we did a play about it, or we, I wrote a story about it with characters, and here comes Casey. So yeah, I remember that being really important to me as a student. And so I try to create those moments as much as I can when I'm working in schools.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me. I think what you described earlier, where you're saying you're not necessarily the one creating, but you're hoping that these students you're working with are going on to create
Yeah.
things and are going on to contribute to the creation of Portland. But I think that sort of narrative is part of the reason we undervalue teachers and undervalue the work you're doing. And I mean, I'm a teacher myself, and it's so hard when we're in it to feel like that impact is happening, that creation is happening
Yeah.
in that moment, and we can't see that long-term effect or benefit. So, can you sort of speak to your intentionality in those moments,
Yeah.
even if you're not seeing where the creation's going?
I mean, that's totally true. And I know you feel it. We all kind of feel it, especially as a like specialist teacher. Um, or,
Mm,
you know, sometimes I will see students for a semester at a time. And then I don't really ever see them again. You know, maybe they're not in the after school program anymore. Maybe I'm working at a different school. So yeah, I don't often get to see where these students take, you know, whatever fun activities or projects or performances we did, but it is it's always a joy to see what we create, you know, in just in that small hour, whether, you know, it's not something that might last a very long time. It might not even be performed in front of an audience, but it's still creation. Um, I I guess the impact is more, like I was saying, the impact is more, is it sticking with the kids, and is this going to give them some kind of support, either as performers or as learners, or just in having fun after school, for an hour, because you need that every now and then. Um,
mhm.
that feel you know that still feels really purposeful for me. So even though I'm not the creator all the time, supporting that creation, no matter how small it may be, it is significant. I think it's significant in the long run, and definitely important to me. I have, I guess, a few students now. Like, I finally reached an age where, like, I have students who have gone off to college, or, you know, gotten their
Mhm.
dream job, or just made me proud in some other way that I want to boast about them and brag about them. And that definitely is, it is a nice to see kind of the tangible creations
Mm.
coming from my own work. And I don't even like to take that much credit for it, but just seeing that, knowing and hoping that I had some kind of impact, and where it is great. Dealing with not being able to see that all the time can be a challenge. I definitely get students that I'm connected to, and I maybe haven't seen them in years, and I still think about them like, "Oh, that kid was so funny." Like, I wonder what they're
Mhm.
doing now, or if they're still doing that thing that I told them not to do, or the thing I told them to do. I wonder if they're doing that crazy thing. Um, and it it's I don't know. I don't know how I deal with that. Maybe that's something I need to think about. But I think it's because I try to get so much out of those immediate um interactions, and not necessarily the impact it might have down the road. Like I said, I am that special teacher that gets 1 hour a week in this very like special sacred space, and it
Mhm.
really might not, that magic might not exist in other parts of the day or other parts of their life. I hope that those little moments are proof to them that those moments exist, and so that they keep seeking
Mm.
them out. Um, right? It just encountering it at least once, but
Yeah.
they'll continue to seek out safe, creative, loving, fun spaces, to be themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how on the outside it feels small or like less impactful, but then when you're in those spaces and you know those kids, it's so clear how radical
Yeah.
having a space like that in a chaotic, terrible, often terrible world like this is.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of interesting too. It's bringing up this existential question for me for artists is like, what if the art we're making we never even get to see the product of? It's sort of exciting in a way to think that we're creating something that we may not even have
Yeah. Well,
access to the final product, or we're part of that collaboration. So that no, that gives me chills to think
yeah.
about.
It's something to think about as an artist. I think it's something that even rings true as an activist, or as a,
Mm,
just um just as someone who's like kind of trying to work to make things better. It doesn't always feel
right.
like I'm going to see, the better. And I look
Right.
at a lot of creators and activists before me who, I would consider elders now and people I look to for advice. And I can also see that they're wondering when they're going to see the fruits of their labor.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's kind of that same mindset that it's not necessarily about the arrival or getting to a certain point, but building towards it and making sure that, I don't know, that we're just supporting, especially the next generation. Goodness, they're fired up. Like
Yes.
I don't even know how to keep up with this
I
generation.
know. We are not ready. We are not ready for them to become adults, y'all. It's gonna get wild.
And I'm so excited
In the best
because
way.
I'm
know. I
tired.
know.
I'm
I'm
like,
like, please,
please, somebody
please.
carry this banner.
Absolutely.
But it's great and inspiring, and it is something to remember that, again, as for me as an artist, or at least as a teaching artist, I don't get to always see the finished product. And as an activist, I'm not always guaranteed to see things into fruition. I'm just building on things, building on what I see, and
right.
trying to make it better.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know,
Well,
deep
let's go.
essentially, like,
Let's zoom out a little bit. I know we got so deep there for a second. Oh, I gotta shake it off a little bit. No, I love it. So let's zoom out a little bit then from your personal work, your personal experience, and let's talk about Portland as a whole. And it's so interesting for me to have people on here that are not necessarily from here originally, to get your perspective on what are you seeing in the Portland art scene that's working, and what are you seeing that we could maybe improve on?
Yeah. It's hard. This year is just hard in general to kind of look at what's working and not working, because we're just trying to make anything work.
Right.
But in general, just my experience in Portland, like most, or like a lot of folks of color, has been trying to find spaces that represent me. And that's been a challenge since I moved here. I definitely will hang out in no, that's not true. I was gonna say hang out in certain parts of Portland hoping to see Black people. But there are definitely certain neighborhoods or like community spaces or artist spaces that I know for sure I'm not going to be the only person who looks like me there. So and the truth is, you have to seek out those places. They don't necessarily fall into your lap in this city. So that's been my experience. That's not to say it's not there. There are a lot of really cool, I would say, artists, folks of color who are either have their own projects going or own theater companies. Or what's really cool now is seeing some folks of color in roles of kind of those upper management roles in theaters, which is going to make a big difference in representation, hopefully down the line. Again, it kind of feels like a thing of a step towards a step towards a step, but
yeah,
it's good news. But yeah, so I don't know, Portland in general, I mean, it's been good to me. The connections I've made with folks has been everyone's pretty, I might be giving too much credit. It is definitely a community that wants to see artists succeed, and wants to see arts succeed. There's not a lot of animosity or different companies or organizations trying to one up the other. I think it is pretty genuinely a community that likes to see growth and mourns when someone goes bankrupt or has to go out of business, or there's something happening in the community that we are not proud of. I think there's a good kind of moral compass in the theater community as a whole in Portland. That's not to say, Portland in general, great intentions, great mindset. We're still working on the implementation.
Yes.
Implementation. We're still working on the implementation of the grand ideas for diversity and inclusivity that we have. The conversations are happening, and they definitely have increased this year, with just everything that's going on with Black Lives, and um,
Mhm.
kind of bringing that to the forefront, especially in theater communities that are often patting themselves on the back for being so open-minded and loving and caring. And
Right.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Like I said, I'm happy. I think I'm someone who has a little more patience for the work to be done, and so it's like my pleasure to be in the room and have these conversations with other artists, with organizations that are trying to figure out how do we fix this systemic problem. It's here, it's built into our habits and our
Mhm.
culture. Um, how do we really fix it? So I'm enjoying being part of those conversations. I also, like I said, enjoy that I can find spaces where I'm not the, token black gal, trying to
Mhm.
explain something to a room full of people with good intentions, but you know, it's kind of the MO of Portland in general, and I do see it playing out in the community of artists as well. Good intentions, great conversations. We need a little more action.
Right. Right. Yeah, we love to talk about
Hmm.
things, but when it actually comes to making the sacrifice and making the sort of hard decisions that it requires, it seems like we're very timid. And I mean, we had conversations too about the scene in general, the theater scene, and how it's not taking risks, even artistically. And I think they're tied together, right? We're not taking risks in who we're involving, what perspectives we're including, and then at the same time, we're seeing that we're not taking risks artistically in the shows we're producing and in how they're being produced. So I think it's all connected, and I think there's the whole culture is to benefit, right, from having these additional
Yeah,
voices and actually executing real equity
yeah,
work
yeah.
that we can see the results of.
And it's happening. There's some great examples of it. I'm super proud of working with Northwest Children's Theater. I think they're one of those theater companies out there, continuing to kind of push to make arts accessible, to make the theater accessible, even during COVID times, doing a lot of online productions. They like hand delivered activity packets to go along with a video production of Seussical, so
Yes.
like kids could have their at home fun activity packet, go to the watch show and say hi to the cast and the characters and watch the show. Still not the same as like going to the theater, but as much as we can bring
Mhm.
the theater to kids. And also, I really appreciate that they're an organization. Like, we talk a lot and we have these great conversations, and I think there's a good amount of action behind it. I really appreciate this like years long collaboration they've had, with Anita, which is great because they do these plays inspired by and just completely designed around and featuring South Indian dance and culture and costumes
Mm.
and dress. It's like every single show that they collaborate on is just the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing. And it's sure
Mhm.
it's risky. Maybe you're not always going to have an audience for um, an Indian interpretation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, or an Indian interpretation of what else have we done? Jungle Book. I guess that's not really an interpretation. That is a story that comes from India. So
But definitely needs a reinterpretation
yes,
from an Indian
yes.
perspective.
Yes, and putting it back in the hands of the folks who should be telling the story
Right.
and playing our characters and doing these dances. And on top of that, you have kids who are non-Indian who are participating and seeing and learning and being exposed to this. So it's just kind of a normal thing to see Indian culture in your life instead of this like special thing that only happens at a international festival or something. Um,
Yes.
Yeah, so lots of respect to NWCT. I have a lot of respect for them as an organization, for kind of putting a lot of action behind their words and doing it, taking the risk, doing.
Yeah. And so, well, that sort of gets into it, but what is your hope, sort of bigger picture? We have this example of Northwest Children's Theater, but what's your hope, bigger picture for Portland
Uh,
art?
just continued representation. We need like I said, the artists are out there, folks of color, queer artists, we're out here. It brings me a lot of joy to work in classrooms because I hope that there are kids who see me and possibly relate, or maybe they see me as someone completely different, and it still is inspiring that someone completely different from them can stand up in front of the room or be on stage or just be a happy, successful adult. Sometimes that's just the best example we can give our youngins. You will survive. I totally lost my train of thought, but yeah, being an inspiration to them. Oh, and representation. So just continuing to put power and into the hands of the people who haven't had it before. Let people direct. Let us, manage. Let us be in charge. Let us make decisions about how these organizations are going to be run. Not just as like here's the board and here's the one voice that represents this issue, but actual representation in people in those roles, in those leadership roles. And then, of course, on stage as well. When you see someone who looks like you on stage, it means a lot. I don't think I had a lot of that growing up. It really has been in the last maybe 5 years, maybe a decade of my life that I've seen artists and performers who look like me and act like me and express themselves in a way that I can relate to. So hopefully me kind of existing as an artist in Portland is working towards that becoming more normalized. But again, the work's still there, and I'd love to see more people who look like me and don't look like me in leadership positions throughout arts organizations in Portland.
I would love to see that too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I don't know if it'll lead to growth, but it will definitely lead to change. So, and that's something I'm into. And I imagine it's only going to boost our creativity and our ability to create awesome art if we have more voices in the room.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such an inspiration having you on. And I so appreciate how you represent the connection between arts and education. And I think there is just so much sort of stigma or hierarchy around educational artistry and like professional artistry. And I just love that we are blending that together and just like empowering the importance of education. And even though we're not necessarily seeing the results all the time, we know that down the line, this artwork is so, so important. So thank you for doing all you're doing for the arts and for the kids.
Yes. Hey, and everyone's got to play. Let's be real. I like to play. So if you want to ever just have an improv game or something, call me up.
Yes, always. Well, where can people find you online, Nicole?
Yeah.
Where can we get in contact with you?
Well, the best place to see me as a performer would be turnbackboyz.com. We're really excited because we're working on an album right now. We're back in the recording studio. Had to take a little bit of a COVID pause to make sure we were doing it as safe as possible, but we are working with an awesome producer and just trying to keep the momentum going, keep creating, getting some music videos out. So definitely check us out online, keep posted. We'll keep you updated with what we're creating. And then I would also encourage folks to go to Northwest Children's Theater's website, nwcts.org. If you have kids who love theater or haven't experienced it yet or just need something fun to do, we still offer classes, still have performances for ages, preschool all the way to high school. So there's a little bit of something for everybody if you want to check it out.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. And check us out on the internet as well. And we'll see you back next time at Creating PDX. Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Creating Portland with me, Pearson Kunz. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Creating PDX, or on our website, creatingpdx.com. This podcast was brought to you by Wolf and Thunder Productions and Golden Pride Productions. See you next time. Bye!